This is CBC Vancouver News.
It's a step in a positive direction.
BC's drug decriminalization experiment begins, but critics say a safe supply and more are needed now.
Pretty actually hard to get into recovery or detox. The wait list can be really long.
Even at the beginning of the year, I honestly thought I was going to be a Canuck.
Across, Horvat scores!
Bo goes.
It's tough, but it's a move that probably needed to happen.
The Vancouver Canucks trade their captain as more changes come to the struggling team.
We certainly wanted to keep him here.
We have schools named after a whole bunch of dead white guys.
But that's about to change for one school. Why the name of a controversial British soldier is coming down. Good evening, I'm Dan Burrittd. Thanks for joining us. As of midnight, adults across BC will be allowed to carry small amounts of illicit drugs. The move to decriminalize comes 6 years after this province declared illicit drug deaths a public health emergency. But as Susanna De Silva tells us, others say the move must be coupled with a safe supply and more treatment options.
Many here didn't know today was the day.
I heard about it. I wasn't sure when it was coming into effect.
Living on the streets for 3 years, Sarah McDonald calls the move a start, especially since police will stop seizing small amounts.
Definitely prevent a lot of crime, because when it gets taken, then people have to do more things, whatever, to get it. So, and the more desperate people are, the more risky and stupid things they're going to do.
We will work closely to...
Ottawa says it granted BC's request to decriminalize in the hopes of reducing overdoses. On average, more than 6 people die every day in BC.
We will be able to reduce the stigma, the fear and shame that keep people who use drugs silent about their use or using alone, and help more people access life-saving supports and treatment.
BC asked for a limit of 4.5 grams. Ottawa decided it would be 2.5 of cocaine, meth, MDMA, and opioids, generally about the size of a quarter. Police officers have received training on the new rules, though generally haven't been arresting people for small amounts of drugs since 2020, but they still seized them.
This model that we're moving towards is destigmatizing that drug use, so they don't fear, a police officer's interaction, but hopefully we can direct a person to help and support.
Although police chiefs support the move, they worry about the possible increase in public consumption, while others say the way to prevent deaths is to prescribe a safe supply.
It's a step in a positive direction, but it's a half measure. And we need urgent, comprehensive intervention that addresses the fact that the drug supply at this moment is toxic and killing people.
I think it's definitely going in the right
While
direction.
McDonald worries about a lack of treatment options.
I knew someone who was waiting for a few months to get into it, and then they missed the day, and then they had to go back on the wait list, and then it's like so upsetting.
All levels of government say they will be increasing support and treatment for those looking for help, and say they recognize that support needs to be available the moment someone is looking for it. They also say there may be things that come up that they will need to adjust to, but those who advocate for users say they are still worried that the threshold and limit is too low, and also about youth who are not part of this pilot program. Susanna De Silva, CBC News, Vancouver.
As Susanna indicated, there are questions over whether BC has enough resources to handle the new decriminalization policy. Mira Bain says more on how government agencies will try to measure its impact and what families of those killed by toxic drugs think.
Reducing stigma around drug use is a key measure of success. Vancouver sports writer Jason Botchford, a father of 3, died after overdosing on cocaine and fentanyl in 2019.
His secret became my secret, which became this harboring shame that I carried for a year. I was so fearful that people would judge him and tear down his legacy.
His wife says she didn't know about his drug use and finally told their 2 oldest children about what happened.
They were actually more mad that I kept the truth from them than how he died. We all have a responsibility to change the narrative on substance use.
But while the province hopes new rules decriminalizing small amounts of illicit drugs will reduce stigma, critics are questioning whether there's enough help available when people ask for it.
The main concern from the opposition is that this government is not as prepared as they should be to provide recovery supports and services to people who do reach out for help.
BC's coroner will reveal the latest number of illicit drug toxicity deaths tomorrow.
Tragically, illicit drug toxicity deaths have occurred in our province at more than double the national average.
While police agencies have implemented training, there are questions over how the federal and provincial governments will keep track of the policy's success, with the ultimate goal to save lives. There will be numbers made available to the public.
It will be that there will be a formal preparation of a quarterly dashboard that will be shared with Canadians.
It's still not clear what that will look like. The federal government has said the province was granted the exemption for less than 2.5 grams because of the data it's gathered so far from public health and public safety agencies. Experts in the field of mental health and addictions hope this new policy will be the way forward. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
A cold spell is sweeping across most of BC, with temperatures in some parts of the province expected to drop to well below -10 overnight. That cold blast is concerning advocates for people without homes, especially after that series of snowstorms last month that hit people hard here on the South Coast. Cities including Burnaby, Vancouver, and Squamish are opening emergency warming centers. Meanwhile, the city of Kelowna is deploying insulated shelters to help people living on the streets there. There are 20 of these insulated foam shelters big enough for one person to lie down in. The shelters are being used in Kelowna's designated camping area along the Okanagan Rail Trail.
This is by no means a solution of any sorts to address any housing needs or any sheltering needs. This is really just an immediate interim measure to provide some relief to our community during times of extreme weather.
The city has also provided about half a dozen two-person insulated shelters, saying all its homeless shelters right now are full. An estimated 100 people are sleeping outside on the streets of Kelowna on any given night. Today marked the 6th day of the inquest into the death of a Vancouver police officer who took her own life in 2019. Constable Nicole Chan filed a complaint against two officers alleging sexual assault and extortion prior to her death. Sergeant Corey Beck, a longtime mentor of Chan, told the inquest he spoke with her the night before she died. Beck said that Chan was afraid of not being able to work again after human resources staff showed up to a hospital while she was apprehended under the Mental Health Act. The inquest also heard about Chan's fears that co-workers in the department were talking about her and spreading rumors. Tomorrow is the final day of the inquest. The Komagata Maru Memorial in Cole Harbour has been defaced again, the third time in less than a year. The memorial commemorates the nearly 400 immigrants from India aboard the Komagata Maru that were turned away from Canada in 1914, even though they were British subjects. After months docked in Cole Harbour, they were forced to return to India, where many were shot and killed. The Canadian government has since acknowledged that it was a racist act.
Oftentimes when we hear of these vandalism, it's just like, okay, here we go again. It's clear that this memorial site, which is, bestowed with such meaning, with such history in terms of histories of empire and race in this country and province, continues to be targeted. And this time it was specifically, naming and shaming South Asian stereotypes and stigmas.
Police are investigating the vandalism, and the city says, while it's unclear what the motivation was, it shows disrespect to those commemorated and their families. It had been rumored for months, but today the Vancouver Canucks are without a captain. The team has traded Bo Horvat to the New York Islanders after 9 seasons here. Horvat is heading across the continent in exchange for 2 forwards and a protected first-round draft pick. Horvat was picked by the Canucks in the 2013 draft and named captain in 2019, scoring over 200 goals in his time here. This season, he tied his career high with 31 goals and was set to represent the Canucks at the upcoming All-Star weekend. Horvat says as far back as the summer, he thought he would stay in town for good.
I thought I was going to be a Canuck for life, to be honest with you. And, just things didn't work out that way. And, it led me to this. So, I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful that, the New York Islanders really believe in me. And I'm proud to be a New York Islander now.
Horvat is the first in what will likely be many changes to the squad as it lurches through a tough season. His trade comes just days after the team fired head coach Bruce Boudreau. Canuck brass say they're sad to see Bo go, but claim they put their best offer in months ago and he wanted to wait.
We certainly wanted to keep him here, but when when we made our offer and were understanding that that might not be the case, my job is to check around in the league and talk to teams and see if they have an interest in the player.
It's not clear who will be named captain now. At least one hockey watcher doesn't expect one to be appointed the rest of the season, and he argues trading Horvat is the right call.
I think some of the younger players on this team who have already become the leaders, Elias Pettersson is one of them, even a guy like Quinn Hughes. You're going to see some of these younger players step into that leadership role over the years.
It won't be long before Horvat faces his now old teammates. The Islanders host the Canucks next Thursday. A name change is coming to a downtown Vancouver school. Tonight, the school board unanimously voted to drop the name of Lord Roberts from a West End elementary. It was named more than a century ago for a famed British soldier, but his legacy has faced increased scrutiny in recent years. Justin McElroy joins us with the update. Justin, why this change?
Yeah, Dan, this has been the end result of a multi-year campaign by the local Parents Advisory Committee, who have been arguing that Lord Roberts should not be on the name of the school for one main reason. During the Boer War, where he was a leading general for the British Empire, he ran concentration camps. And the Parents Advisory Committee says that when you add up the fact that he had no connection with British Columbia or Canada whatsoever, it simply didn't make sense that in 2023 they should continue to have a school honoring him.
Lord Roberts hasn't made sense for, I guess, as long as people have been against naming schools after people who ran concentration camps. I'm confident we can come up with better names to help people find schools or better recognize the place that we live.
Now, as for what the school becomes named, well, that's going to be a new process, though Rose says that the Parents Advisory Committee has argued that the new name shouldn't be for a person, but rather something geographically centered that represents the neighborhood or the greater region better.
Justin, this is part of a trend we've seen in recent years with school names. Why do we hear so much about this here in Vancouver?
Yeah, and it's a simple reason is that in Vancouver, a large proportion of the schools, much more than anywhere else in the province, are named for people with no tangible connection to British Columbia or Canada whatsoever. Take a look at this chart. It shows every school in the city of Vancouver and what they were named for. And right at the top of the list, we're going to go from 29 to 28 at that top list. But you see it's a large proportion of schools that are named for lords, prime ministers, British explorers, what have you, people with no connection. So when we start talking about, as the school board has for many years, having schools that better reflect their communities and the experiences of people who live there, you start looking at places that can be changed. We saw Matthew Begbie School already changed, David Lloyd George Elementary changed. Now we add Lord Roberts to that list as well.
All right, Justin McElroy, thanks very much.
Thanks, Dan.
Work has begun at Boundary Bay in Delta to protect the tidal marsh there. Crews have been removing log debris that floated away from industrial sites and ended up in that delicate ecosystem. We caught up with the project lead about the importance of restoring that marsh.
So a number of tidal marshes throughout the Fraser Delta have been covered in woody debris that's the result of human activities. You might be able to see in the background, we're leaving the large wood and the large natural wood with those root wads. We're leaving those in place so that they can provide perching locations for native wildlife and whatnot. We're also removing any large garbage and debris that we find. And there's also some logs that have been covered in creosote that were used for various industries along the banks of the Fraser. And we're removing that creosoted logs and disposing of it in a safe manner. Tidal marshes in Boundary Bay help to protect our communities from coastal flooding. And tidal marshes also provide benefits directly to humans. So these ecosystems take carbon from the atmosphere and store it into the sediment. We would love to work with the logging industry to talk with them about improving best management practices for storing these logs in the log storage areas throughout the Fraser River so that these logs are not escaping and accumulating in these tidal marshes. And we would also love to work with industry. We think this is a fantastic opportunity for industry to be part of the solution by helping out possibly to remove some of these accumulations of woody debris and restore more tidal marshes in the Fraser estuary.
Victoria Police have a new tool for dealing with mental health calls. They are partnering with Island Health to create a new mental health team. A police officer will be paired with a clinician to deal with calls about psychosis and suicide attempts, amongst other things. The service will be available 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. A similar service was announced in Nanaimo last week. You may have seen one in your neighborhood. Small, free lending libraries. But now there's a place offering movies of a certain vintage in Langley, and it's a blockbuster. We mean that literally. It's run by a grade 12 student at Walnut Grove Secondary, Matt Reed. He fondly remembers going to the old Blockbuster in Walnut Grove as a younger boy, and he jumped at the chance to do something similar now. The little cabinet is full, as you can see, and he still has boxes of DVDs and tapes inside the house, free for anyone to take, leave, and then return.
They don't have to, but they could get a membership card from a little cabinet like this. It's a membership card of holding.
You can find the location of Matt's free Blockbuster at the website freeblockbuster.com. The map says his is the only one in BC. No word yet if you have to. Be kind and rewind.
It's essential that you bring at least the minimum equipment.
Better to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it. Rescuers rebuke an article questioning hiking essentials. We'll bring you that story right after this. Thank you for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream tonight. A group of British Columbians have been recognized by the province for exemplary service to their communities. This year's Good Medal of Citizenship recipients include 3 young community workers. Saurabh Sandhu has more on their contributions.
From collecting toys for sick kids to fighting climate change, these young award recipients have done it all.
They have given of themselves in extraordinary ways in service to their communities.
I'm so honored to be here with such an amazing group of people.
University student Rashika Selva Kumar has been volunteering as a mental health advocate since she was in grade 9.
I saw a lot of my peers struggling with their own mental health, so I wanted to do my part and see if I could help them and create a space where we can talk openly about these things.
She was among a group of 7 people from Metro Vancouver being honored for their dedication to service at a ceremony at the Vancouver Art Gallery Sunday. In total, 15 British Columbians are being recognized, including 4 from Vancouver Island and 4 from the interior. 20-year-old Landon Brown has spent the pandemic collecting toys for sick kids who are receiving treatment in hospital.
Some of them can't afford a tablet or a phone to keep in touch, so we wanted to be able to give them that opportunity to contact their family and their friends.
Rachel Dong is a changemaker in her community, championing other young people to reduce their environmental footprint and food waste.
I potentially want to go into education, so I feel like educating and learning about these concepts are a very important first step towards taking action.
The young volunteers say they are honored to be recognized for their work, but say this is just the beginning. They are encouraging others to step up and volunteer also.
It's sometimes hard to start your own initiative or become involved, but once you find that community who supports you, you can really go from there. And don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone.
Anyone can make a difference and just help your community.
Rashika says no matter how you choose to make a difference, do what makes you feel happy. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
5 people have been killed by avalanches in BC already this year. Now, while several of the victims were well prepared, there's new debate about how many essential items you need for survival. For years, advocates have recommended 10, but a study out of the U.S. says just 4 will do. As Yasmin Gandam tells us, experts here call that misinformation.
North Shore Search and Rescue say the difference between being prepared and not having the right equipment is life and death.
A probe, a transceiver. This is gonna produce a signal, so you're gonna wear this. So if you get caught in an avalanche, it's gonna allow people to locate where you are, and then you're gonna need a shovel.
The essential gear you need also depends on the season, with winter bringing an increase in avalanche risk. Having the right clothing is a non-negotiable.
But this can make the difference between you having hypothermia and not having hypothermia. So this little puffy here is a great thing to have. Obviously, having a Gore-Tex jacket is very important, especially in this climate.
He also recommends having a headlamp and a satellite device.
You're not relying on this for anything else other than calling for help.
Danks and other search and rescue crews in BC are worried this message is getting lost, as a study from the U.S. circulates online. It argues hikers only need 4 essentials: water, food, extra clothing, and a medical kit, that the rest is unnecessary.
I find it disappointing because it's essential that you bring at least the minimum equipment.
But BC Search and Rescue says it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
It's like asking someone who came back from a car ride, did you need your seatbelt and the airbag? No, I didn't need it. But if you ask someone who was in an accident if they needed that seatbelt or that airbag, they would have a different story.
BC Search and Rescue has been collecting data for years to keep people safe. There are more than 1,700 rescues a year, and many because hikers were unprepared.
50% aren't injured, and of that, 25% didn't have a navigational aid. 10% got trapped by darkness. They didn't have the right gear. They didn't have flashlights.
Advocates don't want anyone to leave behind essential items, and when you take your cell phone,
please make sure that you have a backup battery for your phone.
Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
There's a live shot of Cambie Street in City Hall. After some nice clear days, we have a chance of snow and then rain on the south coast. Johanna will have your BC-wide forecast right after this.
It's opening night for the David Milne exhibit at the Vancouver Art Gallery. A lot of food, finery, and fuss, just to celebrate the work of a relatively unknown Canadian painter. There's even books, posters, and T-shirts bearing Milne's name. David Milne himself would have felt uncomfortable being showered with such praise, especially in such lavish surroundings. David Milne Jr. believes his father painted not for fame or fortune, but purely for the creative kick.
I think he'd be pleased that as I am pleased and honored that other people are interested and like the work. But for the artist, for the creator, once the picture was created, once it was done, then it was on to the next one.
Milne made his mark early as the only Canadian to be represented in the now famous Armory show in New York City back in 1913. Milne's colorful New York paintings were shown alongside Matisse, Gauguin, and Picasso. During the later days of World War I, Milne was an artist for the Canadian Army, chronicling his impressions of the destruction of war. But Milne's greatest artistic contribution came when he retreated into the wilds of Ontario, where he redefined the Canadian landscape.
I think my father is thought of as the hermit artist, or the genius in hiding, or the undiscovered artist, the unknown artist, the artist who received no recognition during his lifetime and has emerged as a major figure, has been discovered. Here he was living in great isolation in a tar paper shack on a rocky point on 6 Mile Lake with no one else living on the lake. But at the same time, he was writing almost weekly to Alice and Vincent Massey in London, they were then the High Commissioner in London, the height of the London Society, and concerned with all the great world events of the late 30s and the rise of Hitler and so on. So he was not isolated from thoughts.
Ian, why should the average art-goer care about David Milne?
Well, I think that one expects an artist to change the way one looks at the world. And I think that is something that Milne very much changes the way that we see things. He causes us to sort of consider very simple objects differently. He causes us to look at the landscape differently. And he also causes us, I hope, to look at color and shape and light in a completely different fashion.
Showing us the world in a different fashion was motivation enough for David Milne. Making a lot of money didn't seem to matter. But with this show, the artist's work is being seen by many more people, many for the first time. And Milne would be pleased enough with that.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On March 2nd, join CBC Vancouver's Michelle Elliott and a panel of top UBC experts at the UBC Med Talks, a hybrid event on the topic of healthy aging. Register at alumni.ubc.ca and never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Our BC-wide weather forecast now with meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. Decent weekend, Joe.
Yeah.
Got to get outside. Actually
Same.
played tennis. Found a court that wasn't too wet.
I was very impressed, yeah.
It wasn't impressive, though. Never is.
That's fine. You
There
were
you
out
go.
playing tennis in the sun.
That's true. And the ball occasionally got over the net. Like this
It's
is
a win.
Well, it was a match. It wasn't bad, but we've got a bit of a change on our hands now.
We do, and as we see that Pacific air move in to warm us up for the rest of the week, might come with some snow in the next few hours. Let me show you the temperatures that we hit today. These are the highs. You can see not really making it too far above the freezing mark with that outflow, bringing that Arctic air mass towards the coast. Just a 3 at Victoria Airport and seeing temperatures not get much above -7 to sort of -4 across the interior. Things are going to warm up, but as they do, we're going to see a lot of snow across the interior. And some of that snow may make its way down to the south coast in the next couple of hours, but the bulk of it will be in through the Prince George Caribou region. We've got 30 to 40 centimeters, and it's a long duration event through Tuesday and through most of Wednesday. So winter storm warning in effect for Prince George. Watch as I take you through the arrival of this Pacific system. All of this purple, that's the steady snow for the interior. And you can see a chance along the coastal ranges through tomorrow. So best chance for Vancouver is in the next couple of hours through to tomorrow morning. Now, some models are saying just a few flurries and others are saying up to a couple centimeters. I think much better chance if you're sort of a couple 100 meters above, but there is a chance you might want to leave a little extra time tomorrow morning. Overall, though, that's a good amount of snow for the interior. Good news for our snowpacks, but of course, we'll be watching for the avalanche risk as we get into milder air. And check this out, 3 tomorrow, back to seasonal by Wednesday. We'll forget all about that Arctic blue sky by the time we hit the end of the week. Dan, we're talking about 100 millimeters for Metro Vancouver in the next 7 days.
Oh, delightful. Back
Yes.
to what we're familiar with.
Exactly. We'll just remember your cold, cleared tennis game.
Or not.
Or not.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
And that is your late news for Monday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news at any hour, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1 that begins tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock. Have a good night.